Hello, everyone. This is Sebastián Gálvez, the actor moonlighting as a reporter for Cultura Press. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Luci Lenox, one of the most sought after and award-winning casting directors in Europe, with a career spanning over 2 decades. Luci has played a pivotal role in discovering talent and shaping the cast of international films, television series, and commercial projects. Based in Barcelona, her work bridges the gap between European and global markets, bringing diverse stories and voices to the screen. She has also been a member of the board of CSA. She runs the Frank Stein Studio, and she is the head of the Actors Home. Yes, I said that correctly, right, Luci?
You
Wonderful.
did.
I don't know how you have time to do all this, but let us jump in. And I'd like to know first, what drew you to the world of casting and how did your career start?
It's a really interesting question. My career started in casting because I decided I wanted a day job because I'd been running nightclubs and working in fashion and touring with a rock band. And I thought that a job in film was a day job. I didn't realize it was a day and a night job. And then I got a job at the Catalan, L'Institut de Cinema Catalan, the Catalan Film Institute, to work on a series. And I met Pep Armengol, who is one of the first and best casting directors in Spain. And he needed somebody to help him because he didn't speak English just for one day. I was working in production. And so I traveled with him to a meeting. We had to fly to Madrid. It was way before fast trains. And he told me about his job. He told me what I had to do. And it was fascinating. And then Pep offered me a job after I'd finished my production job to work with him. I worked with him as his assistant very briefly. I went back to production. And then I kept learning about casting. And then when there was the very good co-production deal between the UK and Spain with the fantastic factory in Barcelona set up by Brian Youthner, Pep asked me would I like to be his business partner and work with him casting the London side for the genre films that we're doing. So I kind of fell into casting by accident. I didn't even know what it was. And it took me a couple of years to realize it was the perfect job for me. It's only when I only started realizing this when I met like other casting directors. And I was like, oh, I have something in common with these people. Oh, I love this job. And I've been doing it now for over 20 years, and I still really love my job.
Oh, and I'm so glad you're doing it. You're so great at it. I love it. Thank you so much.
I don't know. Like everybody in the film industry, you're only as good as your last job, but so far, so good. I think that's what I like about it. It keeps me on my toes. You can never be complacent in this industry.
Right. What made you settle in Barcelona, and what are the benefits of this location work-wise? I know you just said because of Pep Armengol, but were there other factors that made you decide, yeah, I'm going to live in Barcelona because I love it here?
Yeah, it's another great question, Sebastian. I first came to Barcelona because I studied here. I did part of my university here. My whole life was going on a completely different path. Then I graduated. I graduated in 1990, which, for those of you who don't know, was a very complicated year in the world. It was a major recession. I'm from Ireland. I'd studied in the UK and Spain because my family believed that there would be more opportunities for me. And then by the time I graduated, there were very few opportunities. I wanted to work in social policy, and I particularly wanted to work in helping refugees and immigrants. That's what that felt my life purpose was. I wanted to help people less advantaged than me. And then I quickly found out that if I got one of those jobs, I would end up being less advantaged because they don't actually pay. And I didn't realize that. Then there was no work, but I'd met a lot of people. I was very lucky when I came to Barcelona. The first time I came to Barcelona was 87. So it's before the Olympics. And this is going to sound very ironic to young people nowadays. I came back to Barcelona after I graduated because rent was so cheap. I had a great friend here, Luis Nater, and he had a old rent. It's what they call it. So it's like in English, they call it a peppercorn rent in an apartment in the center of Barcelona. He was buying an apartment and he said, hey, if you want to come back to Barcelona, I'll just leave the apartment for you. So I moved to Barcelona because of cheap rent. This week
Wow.
had a big manifestation about how high rent is. And it's crazy how much Barcelona has changed in the time that I was here. And like me, many other people were living here. I had a lot of friends who were painters, artists, musicians, and we were all here because it was very cheap to live in Barcelona. It wasn't as cosmopolitan as as it is now. You
Mhm.
couldn't get vegan food or vegetarian food. You'd ask for a vegetarian dish and they'd give you, peas with ham on top. And you'd be like, but it's got meat. And they're like, no, that's not meat. That's just jamon. So it was very different. I sometimes feel a bit like what a rabbit must feel like in Australia, because when I moved to Barcelona, there was not very much tourism. It was before I was here before the Olympics. There are many bars that say they remember me as being one of the first foreigners to go to their bars regularly because I like playing pool. So I used to go and play pool in very divey bars downtown, and I still know the owners of those bars and they still remember me. Um, and so when I first moved here, I was exotic. There weren't that many foreigners. People liked that I was kind of cute and fluffy. Now I feel like a rabbit does, there's too many of us, there's too many foreigners, not so popular anymore. Everybody thinks, if I walk around Barcelona, people speak to me in English because they think I'm a tourist. And, you know, people think I'm taking, so it's been quite a journey. But I love Barcelona because being Irish, I really appreciate the weather. I really like Catalan architecture. I also like there's an eccentricity in Barcelona that appeals to me, which is reflected in the architecture, it's reflected in the theater, it's reflected in the culture. I particularly like Catalan theater. I've been involved in it for years. I worked with the Fura dels Baus for many years of my life. Um, and there's a kind of sense that you can break rules here that you don't have in other major cities.
Right. Now that you mentioned the jamon, I remember my mother she came visit me in the United States and she was bringing jamon to the United States, which you can't do. And so they stopped her at the airport and they said, but ma'am, this is meat. And she said, no, it's fiambre. So, yeah,
Exactly. It's like
yeah,
that. It's not. It's the same as alcohol. Like, oh, I
yeah,
don't drink. Oh, but this is just wine. That's not alcohol. Alcohol is vodka or whiskey, but
yeah.
wine, that's like health
Yeah,
juice.
exactly. You've worked on a number of multinational productions. What are some unique challenges and rewards of casting across different countries and cultures?
It's super interesting. It's trying to convince both the directors and the showrunners to understand the cultural differences and then communicating that with the directors. A very easy example to give is that, in British TV, which is amazing, it's all about the subtext. So when a Spanish actor casts for Britain, they have to remember to play against the text. Likewise, when I'm talking to the directors, I say, remember that a Spanish actor, especially in the time of self-tape, because we're not there to direct people enough, will just go with the text, because in Spanish cinema and TV specifically, it's much more you say what you're going to do or you say what the text is. And in Britain and British TV, you never say what you mean. There's always so many more layers. Then another example would be like with American, when it's slightly heightened reality. So you have to actually look like you're acting. Like once I got a note from an American casting director, I handed in the casting, said, but nobody's acting. And I was like, well, that's my fault because I direct people not to act. Because for us, you have to look like you are being, and it has to be very natural. And then sometimes with Americans, I have to be very careful when I'm doing American projects. I really have to study the genre and I really have to study which platform or which network it's going for, because there are slight variations in style that if I give that information to an actor, European actors are very flexible. They can do that. So it's very challenging for me sometimes to understand, not challenging, it's part of the game, it's fun, but it's a good challenge to understand where the right level of energy and tone is. It's been very complicated my whole career to make sure that actors whose first language is Spanish know that it's okay to have a Spanish accent, but their rhythm and the tonality and the musicality of performing in English is very different. And that they shouldn't sound, nobody's going to get a job because they speak good English. And especially not if they speak like they learned in school and they're looking for approval. So, did I say it right? And if that
Right.
comes up before if they're playing a drug dealer is never going to be like, oh, hello, how are you? So it's working out how to get people in Spain to sound like they're speaking English as though their character was, not how they learned it in school.
Right, yes. And that basically answers the next couple of questions I had already for you. But what would you say are the key qualities you look for when casting actors for such roles, besides, having to not seem like they just came out of the English school and, to play a drug dealer?
It there's so many, and it so often depends on the production. Like for me, just like for each actor, when you go to prepare a role, you have to go back to zero, to first position, and you have to leave everything from the other projects behind. For me, every project is looking for something different. I'm clearly, obviously, I always make a joke, every director I speak to says, I'm looking for good actors. And I'm like, oh, that's good because all the other projects were looking for bad actors, but I'm glad So I think some of the time it's a little bit about I'm looking for people who are authentic. I'm looking for actors who can take direction. I'm looking for actors who are sometimes who have life experience. I'm looking for it's like there's a whole level, but each role is looking for something. So I have to analyze like a detective what that role is looking for. And it might be sometimes the role is looking for somebody who will fit into the landscape of the show that I'm casting. Sometimes I might be looking for somebody who is a consolidated actor known because the foreign production wants somebody with industry validation. Sometimes I'm looking for somebody who just happens to be living in the Canaries because we're casting a lot in the Canaries. Or sometimes, for me, every casting is like a painting or a jigsaw puzzle, and I have to fit all the pieces together. Sometimes it's about getting people who work for the money available. Sometimes it's about getting people who look right. Often sometimes American productions think that Spanish people are Latinos, and I have to find people who look like how they think Spanish people look like, because I can't tell
Right,
them, oh, Spanish people have red hair. They're all kind of different. There's
right.
so many ethnicities in Spain, and they're like, oh. So it really depends on the role. But I'm genuinely, and I have to hand in a range of people, and I have to be happy with the range that I hand in. So I'm looking for people who can do the job, do what it says in the description,
Right.
whatever that is.
Right. And based on what you're saying, I recently attended a panel here where talent agents in Hollywood said that they're fighting to get Latino clients to be casting roles other than the help or members of a drug cartel. Do you have the same experience in Europe? Are scripts more diverse and inclusive than in America?
No.
Okay.
I think they're not. I think they should be. I think scripts are more diverse and inclusive in America in general. And I think that, I mean, you can see that it starts with the commercials. And, in my office, we also cast commercials. Commercials, I don't really like the word diverse, by the way. I prefer representative. So
Mhm.
representation, because if you're talking, when you use the word inclusivity, and I find it very American in that it's talking about including people in the majority, whereas I believe in representation, which is representing what society actually is. And it's not, people who are not white are actually the global majority. So
Mhm.
inclusive casting is including people who look like me, who's white or pink or a little bit red when I live in Spain in the summer in the casting. So I think that we have to be aware and be careful about what we call inclusion and diversity, because we're all diverse and we should all be included. So that's representation.
Right.
Um, I think that we have a problem with the kind of scripts that get financed sometimes,
Mhm.
that it's very easy for people to just keep telling the same story over and over again. And I think that it would be great if we told different stories. I think in terms of gender, we're more representative in Europe. It's not quite so polarized towards the cis white male. But I think that we have a long, long, long way to go.
Right, right. Understood. What challenges do actors from Spanish-speaking regions face in breaking into international productions, and how can they overcome them?
Your questions are so great. It is so important because everybody says they want to work internationally, but they don't understand, in my opinion, what an international actor is. An international actor is somebody who works in international productions. So for people who want to work internationally, they have to work at home first. There are exceptions to the rule, of course, and there are many exceptions. But if you think about the people, if I asked you to name the people with the most international careers, and you go back, you would see that they've done international projects that have from their own country. I always say it's a little bit like with your family. If you want to have a good relationship in life, you have to make peace with your own swear word family first. And it's a bit like that, Spanish actors, they say, I want to work internationally. I said, but you haven't worked here yet. And they said, no, but I don't like Spanish cinema. And I'm like, make peace with it. We're making great cinema here. Get your roles here. Like if you move to London or LA as a Spanish actor with no credits, you're going to end up doing at the most day roles. And it will take you a very long time. There are exceptions to this rule, and there are exceptions. There are people who've moved to Spain from other countries, and suddenly there's been the right role at the right time. There are a few exceptions in the Spanish industry, but very few that I can think of who never worked at home. There are one or two, and then they come back, and we're delighted when they come back. A very good example of that is Laura Prats, because she went off and she did Marco Polo, and that was amazing for her. And she hadn't really been cast here. And there's one or two other young Spanish actors, because of global casting, they've suddenly got cast in a TV series, and the role's right for them. And everybody's like, why didn't you know about them in Spain? And I'm like, well, they just got lucky. But in general, to have an international career, it is to work at the top of your game in your own industry.
With advancements in artificial intelligence, how do you see AI impacting the casting process in the future? Everybody's talking about AI nowadays, and some people are worried. Some people feel like, oh, it's another tool that now we can use to our advantage. So, what do you think about it, and how do you think it's going to affect casting?
It's so interesting. And I'm one of the people who thinks that it's a tool. I'm also aware of it. Um, I think that most people talk about AI and they talk about it as though it was one entity, like this big robot. It's not. It's so much new technology. So it's working out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. There is supportive AI, which is, so it does the stuff that you find boring. So I use it for accounts. I use it for all kinds of things. I think that we have to study it. Like the people who are most scared of AI that I've talked to in my profession haven't even used ChatGPT, and I'm like, okay, you need to get with the program. You need to know how it can help you. And you also need to talk to the people who are trying to be disruptive with it. I think AI is a game changer in our world. I think it's quite scary in a way because it's so much stuff that you can do now that you don't really realize that you can do. So I use it a lot. I study it a lot. I study something about AI every day because I really want to know before I have an opinion. There's stuff that I find amazing. I think for actors, it can be really supportive. You can, fix the voice on your self-tapes. You can remove the you can cut out little bits. You can do stuff and nobody will know, so that's great. I would like to believe that even I would like to believe that human contact is going to become even more important, and authenticity is going to become even more important. And actors are a part of being authentic. They're the part of that tell the story. That I went to the theater last night, and it was just such a joy to sit in a room because, like everybody, I suffer from slight attention deficit disorder at the moment, because if I'm watching a film at home but my phone rings, I check my phone, WhatsApp comes, so being in a theater in an immersive experience where actors are really taking you on a journey, I think that's amazing. I think great film that tells authentic stories is going to come forward even more, because there's going to be the kind of commercial, not so high level, that AI will have an effect. I think for voiceover, it's going to be very difficult for voiceover actors. I think it's going to be very difficult for some of the professions in our industry. But I think that because authenticity is going to matter even more, like I don't believe reviews now on the internet because they're all written by robots and they're fake. But if you told me, oh, hey, go and see this film, I'd be like, oh, great, Sebastián told me to go and see a film, and I know who you are and I trust you. And I think that that will happen in society more and more. But we have to keep reminding people that it's being authentic and being real is extremely attractive.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I love it. I share the same vision as you have. And this is the perfect note to end our interview. But I'd like to ask you one final question because I know actors like to know, how do they get in touch with you? How do you like actors getting in touch with you? And I also, I know some actors would love to work with you, and I know you offer some workshops. Do you have any workshops coming up that you'd like to share with our viewers? And, tell us a little bit about that,
Well,
and
there's
we'll
a
say
few things.
goodbye.
There's several ways to get in touch with me. I'm very accessible. Instagram is the only social media platform I really use. So I'm Luci_Lenox. I'm very easy to find there. I post stuff there. The Actors Home is a community that I set up for actors. I really recommend it to actors. It's just the Actors Home on Instagram, and then we'll send you a link to join. That's where we do a lot of community, a lot of mindset. I love teaching, so I do a lot of stuff there, and it's all included. It's trying to keep things very, very cheap and affordable for actors, but there's also voice classes with voice coaches, self-tape classes with coaches like Mel Churcher, and it's free for refugees. It's also free for any actor who's on maternity or paternity leave. We give 6 months free for new parents because nobody else in the industry supports them, and I feel they should be supported. And we run a lot of challenges. And then at Frankenstein Studio, which is a studio in Barcelona where I'm based, they organize courses as well. But I really try to share the information as freely as possible. And for actors who want to send me their material, it's just go to my webpage, lucilenox.com, and send it there. I'm always interested in actors who are based in Spain. Um, so that's how you find me. I'm pretty easy to find.
Thank you so, so much for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom with us. I love talking to you, and I wish you the best. I know you're casting now. Also, what are the latest projects you're casting right now? I know you're with The Walking Dead,
Oh
Daryl
yeah,
Dixon.
we're having so much fun with Daryl Dixon. It's great. So fingers crossed they get a fourth season. Fingers crossed. Um, and it's great, and I'm really proud of all the cast, and they're killing it. And so that's amazing. And then I've just finished doing a film called El Mal with Juanma Bajueloa, which is another joy. It's totally different. It's independent, pure filmmaking for telling stories and telling very authentic stories. And then I am working on a few other projects, but I can't really ever talk about my projects until
I know, I
someone
know.
talks about them.
We'll leave it at that. I like to keep a little mystery there too. So that's wonderful. Thank
But
you,
I
Lucy.
would like to say I'm very busy, and I'm very grateful for being very
Oh,
busy.
I don't know how you do it. You're so busy.
I have a very good team, and I'm a very, very good time manager. It's like one of those, that's my secret weapon, is I know how to manage my time.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for staying with us until the end. I hope you liked it and more to come. Bye.
Thank you. Take care then. Bye.